Welcome to another episode of Star Truckers, where we travel to the remotest regions of Australia to visit Western Star operators and share their story. It's 5 a.m. and bitterly cold when Greg Dyreen pulls alongside the industrial ice maker to fill his tank with the ice slurry that will keep the freshly harvested ocean trout chilled on the 3.5-hour journey to Petunia's processing factory in Devonport. Based on the picturesque Tasmanian north coast, G&D Transport rely on old-fashioned values. They've adopted new technologies and the proven reliability of Western Star trucks and Detroit engines to stay ahead of the pack. From the Devonport depot, G&D Transport run a diverse trucking operation from site clearing, scrap metal, stock feed to aquaculture transport that we're joining today. The affable yet fiercely determined Tony Dyke, Business Development Manager, is the D in the G&D Transport. By his own admission, the road for G&D Transport has at times been rocky, but with no shortage of perseverance and a desire to set their own course rather than follow the paths of others, general freight loads diminished as demand for their specialised live fish transport grew. Shortly before sunrise, the ramp on the Combi Trader 2 raised as the barge slowly backed away from the jetty. This barge is 35 metres long and 10 metres across, which is wide enough to fit 2 Western Stars on at a time when the season is busy. The journey to the fish pens takes roughly an hour, and today, thankfully, the harbour is calm. It's not always like this. The Tasmanian west coast is notorious for its wild weather, and some days it can be that rough on the harbour the barge can't sail. Tasmania's 3 biggest salmon growers are undergoing a massive expansion here on the west coast at Macquarie Harbour, which will double production. In a state with the nation's worst unemployment levels and a struggling economy, fish farming is seen as one of the few economic lights on the horizon. The joint planning application to extend the farms from 560 to 920 hectares has been approved, and growers are moving fast to get the pens in. Petunia, the oldest operator on the harbour, is aiming to eventually have 5.5 million fish. It's a long way from the single pen of trout the fishing dynasty, the Rockcliffs, put in the harbour 20 years ago. The general conversation over how the local football club was doing this year ceased as the barge approached the fish pens. It takes a steady hand to gently guide the barge next to the pens. Then Graham pulls the levers back to slow the 2 600 horsepower engines as the barge glides next to the pen. Once the barge is securely tied to the pen, a huge net is lowered into the enclosure.
We had 2 hours to do the harvest and another hour return. I should get finished back home by about 6:30 tonight, so roughly about 12 hours.
How long have you had this 4800 Western Star?
Yeah, I've had the truck since about May, and about 30,000 kilometres. Yeah, very comfortable truck to drive. Yeah, no major problems at the moment, so yeah, it's all good.
What do you like best about it?
Just the ease of getting into it, and I use the sleeper a fair bit, so yeah, it's much easier to get into the sleeper than what the past trucks I've been driving, yeah.
How do you find the power of the new 15-litre Detroit?
Yeah, not too bad at all. The engine brake's brilliant on the hills around here because you really need them down here. Yeah, it's a nice truck to drive, yeah.
The huge feeder hose had been lowered into the pond, and the ocean trout swim up the tube and into the stunning machine. The machine can process up to 60 Atlantic salmon or 30 ocean trout per minute. Once the fish have swum through the stunner, they slide down the chute and into the tanker. Today they'll load 2,000 ocean trout. An hour or so later, the tanker was loaded. West Star's Phil Slater told us that the durability of the Western Star cabin was one important factor in G&D's purchasing decision. He explained how the Constellation cabins are made from double-sided galvanised steel that is treated with a 17-stage cathodic E-coat system and finally finished with aluminised wax rust-proofing in all cavities. He added that fiberglass bonnet and cab skirts are extremely durable and well suited for severe service duties in the sea air, such as this one down the west coast. Under the hood of two new G&D Transport 4800 Western Stars is Detroit's DD15 ERG 14.8 litre engine that's rated at 560 horsepower. And it punches out a healthy 1,850 pounds per foot at 1,200 RPM. The transmission is Eaton's 18-speed RTLO 20918B that is married to a Meritor RT46 160 GP with a 4.3 to 1 ratio and cross locks in the rear axle, all riding on the airliner suspension. Up the front of the chassis, Phil spec'd the 7-ton Meritor MFS 73 easy steer axle with 6.6 kilogram taper leaf springs that include threaded bushes and high-capacity wheel bearing. Graham spotted something off in the distance. It was another of G&D Transport's 4800 Western Stars, heading out on the other barge with a load of live baby fish from the hatchery. But more on that in the next episode of Star Trucker.